The battle klaxons aboard the HSS Indomitable blared to life, their shrill tones cutting through the hum of routine maintenance. Ensign Parker dropped his calibration tool, narrowly missing his foot as he scrambled toward his station. All across the aging warship, similar scenes played out, a well-rehearsed dance of controlled urgency. Captain Helena Rivera strode onto the command deck, her dark hair pulled tight in a regulation bun, eyes sharp and alert despite having been woken from her first decent sleep in 3 days. "Status report," she demanded, sliding into the captain's chair as holographic displays flickered to life around her. Lieutenant Commander Javier Rodriguez, her XO, nodded toward the central communication array. "Priority transmission from Galactic Council headquarters, Captain. They'd flagged it as extinction-level urgency." Rivera raised an eyebrow. The Council, with its bureaucratic tendencies, rarely used such dramatic classification. "Put it through, clear channel." The holographic display coalesced into the elongated features of Ambassador Shaler of the Tristan species. Even through the projection, Rivera could see the ambassador's normally iridescent scales had dulled to an ashen gray, a sign of extreme distress among her kind. "Captain Rivera, I speak with the voice of emergency authority. The Voratian Collective has launched a surprise assault on Nexus Station. We have never seen an attack of this magnitude. 3 defense fleets shattered in less than a standard cycle." Murmurs rippled across the bridge. Everyone knew of the Voratians, a hive-mind species with technological capabilities that outstripped most council races by centuries. They rarely engaged with the galactic community, preferring isolation in their distant systems. Behind Ambassador Scheller, Rivera could make out the council emergency chamber, where representatives of 24 species argued vehemently. A Mithrite overseer, his insectoid features magnified in high definition, jabbed a segmented limb toward the transmission. "This is madness, Scheller. The humans are barely a century into faster-than-light travel. Their vessels are primitive, their tactics untested in real galactic conflict. We need the Phyrexian Armada, not this obsolete warship." Rivera kept her expression neutral, though her fingers tightened on the armrests of her chair. The Indomitable might not have the crystalline hull technology of the Phyrexians or the quantum phase weaponry of the Mithrites, but it had something equally valuable: a crew of humans who had trained together for years. Ambassador Scheller turned back to the transmission, her vertical pupils narrowing. "Captain Rivera, I have studied Earth's military history extensively. Your species possesses something the Voratians cannot predict. You thrive in chaos. You adapt when logical systems fail. The Council forces are coordinated, precise, but rigid in doctrine." The ambassador's voice lowered to almost a whisper. "The Phyrexian Armada is 3 sectors away. Reinforcements from the core worlds will take 6 standard cycles to mobilize. Nexus Station will fall before then, and with it the lives of 16 million civilians from 7 peaceful species." Rivera glanced at her tactical display, already calculating. "We can make the jump in 14 hours at emergency speed. We'd arrive 3 days before any other reinforcements. Then you will go." Hope colored the ambassador's voice. Rivera met the alien's gaze through the holographic field. "The Indomitable stands ready to assist the Council, Ambassador. Send all tactical data on the Voratian attack patterns. We'll need to know exactly what we're jumping into." As the transmission ended, Rodriguez moved closer to the captain's chair. "Ma'am, with respect, the Mithrite wasn't wrong. We'll be severely outgunned and outnumbered. When have humans ever let that stop us?" "XO." Rivera stood, addressing the bridge crew. "Sound general quarters. I want all department heads in the tactical room in 15 minutes. Wake everyone. Cancel all non-essential operations." As the crew scrambled to their duties, Rivera opened the ship-wide communication channel. The faces of her 287 crew members appeared on small displays throughout the vessel. Humans of every ethnicity, background, and specialty, united under Earth's banner. "This is Captain Rivera. We have received an emergency distress call from Nexus Station. The Voratian Collective has launched an assault that has already broken through 3 defense fleets. We are the only vessel that can reach the station before it falls. She paused, letting the gravity of the situation sink in. We will arrive 3 days before any reinforcements. It will be just us, against an enemy that has never tasted defeat. Her voice strengthened, resolute and clear. But they've never faced humans before either. Prepare for quantum jump in 1 hour. Rivera out. As the Indomitable powered up its experimental drives, Rivera stared out at the star field beyond the view screen. Humanity was about to announce its presence on the galactic stage in a way no one would soon forget. The HSS Indomitable ripped through the quantum boundary, space itself seeming to scream as the human vessel tore back into normal reality. Captain Rivera steadied herself against her command chair, blinking away the disorientation that came with faster-than-light travel. "Tactical display," she ordered, her voice cutting through the momentary silence on the bridge. What materialized before them stole the breath from every human present. A graveyard of broken ships stretched across the view screen, hulls torn open to vacuum, crystalline structures shattered into glittering fragments that drifted like deadly snow. The defense of Nexus Station had not just failed, it had been obliterated. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Park at Tactical. "There must be hundreds of destroyed vessels." Rodriguez, his face ashen, reported from the sensor station. "Scans show Nexus Station is still intact, Captain, but its outer defensive rings have been breached." "And the Voratian swarm?" He gestured helplessly at the display. The Voratian fleet moved like nothing the humans had ever seen. Thousands of crystalline vessels flowing together in perfect harmony, more like a single organism than individual ships. They pulsed and shifted as one, their movements hypnotically beautiful in their deadly precision. "Life signs," Rivera demanded, her eyes never leaving the horrific scene. Scattered throughout the debris field. Some escape pods, some survivors in sealed compartments of damaged vessels, reported Dr. Chen from the medical station. "Estimate approximately 3,000 survivors across all species." Rivera nodded, already formulating a plan. "Open all emergency channels. Lieutenant Okafor, let's announce our presence." Before Okafor could comply, their communications array lit up with an incoming transmission. The bridge screen shifted to show a battered command center, where a chidness alien with compound eyes and mandibles stared back at them. "This is Admiral Cathal of the Mithrite Defense Force." The alien clicked, translator software smoothing the insectoid sounds into comprehensible speech. "Identify yourselves immediately." "Admiral, this is Captain Helena Rivera of the Earth ship HSS Indomitable. We've been dispatched by the Galactic Council to assist in the defense of Nexus Station." The alien's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of either amusement or disbelief. Rivera couldn't tell which. "A single human vessel. This is the Council's assistance. We have lost 3 battle fleets totaling over 600 ships." Rivera remained calm. "Admiral, we may be just one ship, but sometimes that's all you need to change the equation. I'm transmitting a tactical plan now. I need an inventory of your remaining vessels and their capabilities. You presume to command this defense." Keithel's translator couldn't quite capture the incredulity in his natural voice, but his body language made it clear enough. "With respect, Admiral, someone needs to. Your current formation is predictable and vulnerable to the Voratian attack pattern." Rivera gestured to her tactical officer, who sent detailed analyses of the swarm's movements. "They're thinking like a perfect hive. That's their weakness." The Mithrite commander studied the data briefly, compound eyes unreadable. "What do you propose, human?" Rivera's orders shocked the Allied commanders listening in on the channel. She divided their remaining ships, barely a fifth of their original force, into irregular groups based on 18th century Earth naval tactics from the Age of Sail. "This makes no logical sense," protested a Phyrexian captain, her crystalline features shimmering with agitation. "Our tactical simulations. With respect, Captain, Your simulations failed against the Voratians, Rivera interrupted firmly. They predict logical responses. So we'll be illogical. Communications Officer Eliza Chen worked miracles, translating Rivera's commands into 7 different languages simultaneously, adding cultural contexts that transformed confusion into understanding. Her gift for languages, honed in the multicultural sprawls of Earth's megacities, proved as valuable as any weapon system. Within 30 minutes, the Ractic fleet had reorganized into what Rivera called a dispersed flotilla formation. The Indomitable took position as the primary target, its human-designed shield systems flaring to full power. "All ships, engage on my mark," Rivera commanded, her voice steady despite the enormous risk. "Remember your assignments. Don't stick to the plan if you see a better opportunity. Adapt and communicate." Admiral Kethal's voice came through, still skeptical, but with a note of desperate hope. "The Voratian Collective has never been defeated, Captain Rivera." Rivera allowed herself a small smile. "There's a first time for everything, Admiral." Fleet elements Alpha through Delta. Commence attack pattern, Broken Arrow. Let's show these hive minds what human unpredictability looks like. As the first coordinated attack caught a Voratian flank completely unprepared, Admiral Kethal's mandibles clicked in astonishment. Impossible. They predicted every scenario. Rivera's reply was pure human confidence as the Indomitable dove straight toward the heart of the enemy formation. Exactly. They predicted scenarios that make sense. The Indomitable's mess hall had transformed into an improvised war room. 24 hours had passed since their arrival, and while Rivera's unorthodox tactics had bought them precious time, the Voratian swarm was already adapting, learning, evolving its strategies with each engagement. Chief Engineer Maxim Volkov, a burly man with a thick Russian accent and hands perpetually stained with engine grease, slammed his coffee mug down beside the holographic display of Voratian ship schematics. The alien representatives flinched at the sudden noise. "Their communication is quantum entangled," Volkov said, jabbing a finger at the crystalline structures that served as the Voratian command nodes. "Supposedly unhackable. But what if we don't hack it? What if we flood it with noise?" Science Officer Dr. Amara Okafor, her dark eyes intense with concentration, manipulated the holographic display. Fragments of recovered Voratian technology floated before them, alongside neural pattern analyses compiled from debris they'd managed to salvage. "Look here," she said, highlighting complex patterns in the Voratian communication network. "Their hive consciousness processes information like a crystalline lattice. Beautiful, perfect, and utterly predictable in its construction, and utterly brittle when faced with paradox," added Lieutenant Park, who'd spent the last 12 hours analyzing Voratian attack patterns. The tactical officer pulled up his own findings, overlaying them with Okafor's. "I've seen this before. They're playing perfect chess, every move calculated to mathematical precision." Park's eyes lit up with sudden inspiration. "But we're not playing chess. We're playing poker." "Poker?" asked the Phyrexian logic master, her crystalline features refracting light as she tilted her head in confusion. "A human game of incomplete information and deliberate deception," Park explained. "The Voratians calculate based on perfect information sharing. We need to bluff." Volkov's laugh boomed across the mess hall. "We don't just need to bluff. We need to make them doubt their own minds." He turned to Captain Rivera, who had been quietly observing. "Captain, I have an idea, but it's completely insane." Rivera's lips quirked upward. "Those are my favorite kind, Mr. Volkov." "Let's hear it." Volkov outlined his proposal, modifying the Indomitable's fusion reactor to emit pulses that would mimic Voratian neural patterns but carry contradictory commands. Not an attack on their network, but an infiltration, introducing cognitive dissonance into their perfect hive mind. "You want to give the Voratian Collective a migraine." Admiral Kethal clicked, mandibles twitching with what might have been amusement. "No," corrected Dr. Okafor. "We want to give it an existential crisis. The alien representatives looked on in fascination as the humans debated fiercely, sometimes talking over each other, sometimes laughing despite the dire circumstances. Ideas bounced between departments, rejected, refined, recombined in ways that seemed random but somehow coalesced into a coherent plan. "Your species doesn't think linearly," observed the Phyrexian logic master with wonder in her multifaceted voice. "You jump between concepts, use metaphors, invoke emotional responses in the middle of technical discussions. It's utterly irrational." "And that might just save us all," Rivera replied, standing to address the gathered officers. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're calling this Operation Trojan Horse. Mr. Volkov, you have 8 hours to modify the reactor. Dr. Okafor, work with Lieutenant Park on the precise neural patterns we want to introduce. I want simulations running in 6 hours." As the meeting dispersed, Admiral Cathal approached Rivera privately. "Captain, I must confess something. When your vessel arrived, I thought the Council had sent you as a token gesture, a symbolic act before our inevitable defeat." Rivera met the alien's compound gaze steadily. "And now? Now I understand why Ambassador Scheller specifically requested human intervention. You see solutions where we see only problems." The Admiral's translator struggled to convey the complex emotions in his clicking speech. The Voratians process information with perfect efficiency, but no imagination. They cannot conceive of what they have not already experienced. "That's humanity's greatest strength, Admiral," Rivera said, studying the tactical display where the Voratian fleet continued its relentless advance. "We've spent our entire history imagining things that don't exist yet, and then making them real." Cathal's mandibles clicked softly. "Do you truly believe this plan can work?" Rivera's smile was small but genuine. "Honestly, I have no idea. But that's another human specialty, doing the impossible because nobody told us it couldn't be done." As they spoke, throughout the Indomitable, human creativity sparked like wildfire. In engineering, Volkov's team disassembled equipment never meant to be modified in such ways. In the science lab, Okafor worked with alien neurologists to perfect their understanding of Voratian thought patterns. And in tactical, Park ran simulation after simulation, refining the delivery method for their unconventional attack. The countdown to Operation Trojan Horse had begun. As Allied ships docked with the Indomitable for emergency repairs, the human vessel became an unexpected hub of cross-species interaction. Captain Rivera had ordered all available space converted to accommodate wounded aliens and displaced crew members, transforming cargo bays into makeshift quarters and recreation spaces. Lieutenant Sofia Rodriguez found herself navigating a maintenance corridor on Deck C when she heard an unusual sound, something between a whimper and a chirp. Following the noise, she discovered a Tristine communication officer huddled in a small maintenance shaft, his iridescent scales dulled to a sickly gray. His long, slender fingers trembled as he clutched a personal device, displaying what Rodriguez recognized as family images. Instead of ordering him back to duty, she knelt beside him. "Hey there," she said softly, her universal translator converting her words into harmonic tones the Tristan could understand. "Mind if I join you for a minute?" The alien flinched, obviously embarrassed to be found in such a state by a human officer. "I apologize for my weakness, Lieutenant. I will return to my station immediately." Rodriguez shook her head, settling down beside him. "No rush. Sometimes we all need a moment to breathe." She glanced at the images on his device. "Your family." The Tristan hesitated, then nodded. "My life cluster. They are on the outer ring of Nexus Station." He didn't need to explain further. The outer rings were where the Voratians would strike first if they broke through the defense fleet. "My grandmother was a history professor," Rodriguez said, seemingly changing the subject. "She used to tell me stories about Earth's ancient battles. Did you know there was once a battle where 300 human warriors stood against an army of merely 100,000? The Tristine's head frills lifted slightly in surprise. "Your people fought despite such odds. What logic guided this decision? Rodriguez smiled. Not logic. Necessity, courage, maybe a little stubbornness. Being outnumbered just means we get creative. She gestured around them. Kind of like now. By the time Rodriguez escorted the Tristan officer back to his post, his scales had regained some of their normal luster. Throughout the ship, similar scenes played out as humans connected with their alien allies, bridging cultural gaps with unexpected ease. In the medical bay, Dr. Chen worked tirelessly alongside his team, treating wounded aliens by adapting human medical techniques on the fly. A Mithrite with a shattered exoskeleton watched in fascination as Chen improvised a brace using materials never designed for insectoid physiology. You seem to enjoy challenge, the Mithrite observed as Chen set the final piece. Makes life interesting, Chen replied with a smile, despite his obvious exhaustion. Try to move your limbs slowly. Tell me if there's any pain. The Mithrite complied, clicking its mandibles in what the translator identified as approval. Among my people, medical procedures are performed in complete silence. You humans use humor and conversation during crisis. Why? Especially during crisis, Chen corrected, moving to his next patient. Laughter is good medicine. Reduces stress hormones, increases endorphins, keeps the mind sharp when things get rough. Meanwhile, in a repurposed laboratory, AI specialist Ensign Lily Wong worked alongside Phyrexian mathematicians, demonstrating how human hackers think laterally rather than logically. The crystalline aliens watched in bewilderment as Wong sketched out attack vectors that violated their fundamental principles of information security. But this approach ignores the quantum verification protocols entirely, one Phyrexian protested. Exactly, Wong replied, her fingers dancing over the holographic interface. Why pick the lock when you can convince someone to open the door? We call it social engineering, exploiting psychology instead of technology. The concept seemed to genuinely disturb the Phyrexians, whose society was built on absolute truthfulness. You deliberately introduced deception as a tactical element. Wong paused, considering how to explain. Think of it this way. The Vayratians expect attacks on their system, their technology. They've built defenses against that, but they've never needed to defend against ideas that undermine their very way of thinking. Captain Rivera walked the corridors of her ship, observing these interactions with growing realization. In the makeshift mess hall, she watched humans teaching aliens card games, sharing stories, even exchanging cultural references that required extensive explanation. Despite language barriers and physiological differences, connections formed with surprising speed. Their bonding, Admiral Kithel noted, falling into step beside her. In 48 standard hours, they've developed relationships that would take my species 40 cycles to establish. Rivera nodded. Humans are adaptable that way. We seek common ground, even when there seems to be none. Is this part of your tactical approach? The Admiral inquired, compound eyes focusing on a group where a human ensign was demonstrating sleight-of-hand card tricks to fascinated aliens. Not intentionally, Rivera admitted, but I'm starting to think it might be our most powerful weapon. We don't just adapt to chaos, Admiral. We generate it, and then we thrive in it. As she continued her rounds, Rivera updated her log. The technical preparations for Operation Trojan Horse continue on schedule. But I've observed something equally important. This crisis has created bonds between species that might have taken decades to form otherwise. If we survive this, the Galactic Council will never be the same again. Neither will humanity's place in it. What you're proposing violates 13 laws of physics, the Mithrite navigator protested, mandibles clicking rapidly as he reviewed Captain Rivera's attack plan. The Allied commanders had gathered on the Indomitable's bridge for the final briefing before Operation Trojan Horse launched. Helmsman Lieutenant Darius Jackson, whose ancestors had flown everything from World War I fighters to the first Mars shuttles, simply grinned. Good thing humans only care about the laws we can bend. Rivera stood before the tactical display, the blue glow illuminating her determined features. The modifications to the Indomitable's reactor are complete. We now have the capacity to emit pulses that will disrupt the Voratian neural network, but we need to get close, dangerously close, to their command structure. The display shifted to show their planned approach vector, a suicidal plunge straight through the densest part of the Voratian swarm. Admiral Kethal and the other alien commanders stared in disbelief. The gravitational stresses alone would tear your hull apart, the Phyrexian tactical officer noted, her crystalline form shimmering with agitation. And even if your structural integrity held, the Voratians would predict such an approach and concentrate their firepower accordingly. That's where Lieutenant Jackson comes in, Rivera said, nodding to her helmsman. Care to explain your approach, Lieutenant? Jackson stepped forward, manipulating the tactical display with practiced ease. The Voratians predict movements based on efficiency algorithms, the most logical path from point A to point B. But humans rarely take the logical path. He highlighted a series of maneuvers that seemed to follow no discernible pattern. I'll be executing a modified defensive corkscrew with random vector changes, based on an ancient Earth flight technique from the 20th century. No computer would generate this flight pattern because it's inefficient, borders on structural suicide, and, he smiled wickedly, is impossible to predict. As the Allied commanders broke into a chorus of overlapping objections, Chief Engineer Volkov stepped forward. We've modified the inertial dampeners to operate beyond safety protocols. Will it break the ship? Maybe. Will it work long enough? Also maybe. That's your plan. The Tristine commander's translator couldn't quite capture his incredulity. Maves and broken physics. Rivera's voice cut through the debate. The plan is to do what the Voratians consider impossible. Their entire tactical advantage relies on perfect prediction. When we do the unpredictable, the impossible, their perfect synchronization falters. She looked each commander in the eye, alien and human alike. Every ship in the Allied fleet will execute pre-programmed maneuvers designed to look like a standard defensive formation. The Voratians will respond accordingly, creating an opening for the indomitable. Once we're in position, Operation Trojan Horse deploys. Lieutenant Park at Tactical added, the neural disruptor will trigger confusion within their network. That's when all ships break formation and attack according to their commander's best judgment. No centralized control, no predictable patterns. The briefing room fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, Admiral Kethal spoke. Your species values victory over survival. The question held genuine curiosity rather than judgment. No, Rivera corrected gently. We value victory as a path to survival. Sometimes the safe choice is actually the deadliest. The plan was set. As alien commanders returned to their vessels, the Indomitable prepared for what might be its final mission. Throughout the ship, crew members checked systems, made personal recordings for loved ones back home, and steeled themselves for what was to come. On the bridge, Rivera settled into her command chair. All stations, report readiness. One by one, her officers confirmed their systems were as ready as they'd ever be. Lieutenant Jackson's hands hovered over the helm controls, his expression one of intense concentration mixed with what looked almost like eagerness. Reactor modifications holding steady, Volkov reported from engineering, his voice crackling slightly over the comm. She's humming like a Siberian tiger, ready to roar when needed. Allied fleet confirms formation. Lieutenant Okafor announced from communications, all ships in position. Rivera took a deep breath, looking around at her human crew. A tiny representation of Earth among the stars, about to change the course of galactic history. Lieutenant Jackson, take us in. Full impulse power. The Indomitable surged forward, its experimental engines flaring bright against the darkness of space. As the distance to the Voratian swarm closed rapidly, Jackson's hands became a blur across the helm controls. The human warship performed a maneuver the Voratians calculated as physically impossible, reversing thrust, while simultaneously executing a corkscrew roll that stressed the hull to 99.7% of breaking point. Warning klaxons blared across the ship as structural integrity alarms triggered. On the Voratian command ship, the collective consciousness experienced something it had never encountered before: cognitive dissonance. Their predictive algorithms faltered, their perfect synchronization disrupted by the paradox of witnessing something their models defined as impossible. That microsecond of hesitation was all the humans needed. Operation Trojan Horse deploying. Now. Lieutenant Park shouted over the blaring alarms, his finger stabbing down on the activation sequence. Throughout the Voratian fleet, a wave of confusion rippled outward like rings in a pond. The battle for the very nature of thought had begun. Across the battlefield, Voratian ships suddenly hesitated, their perfect formation developing tiny critical imperfections. What began as microscopic disruptions in their synchronized movements quickly expanded into visible chaos as Operation Trojan Horse took effect. On the Indomitable's bridge, Ensign Wong monitored the spread of their digital weapon through the enemy fleet. Neural disruptor pulses are propagating through their network, she reported, unable to keep the excitement from her voice. The primary Voratian communication channels are experiencing a 70% degradation in coherence. Captain Rivera watched the tactical display with intense focus as enemy vessels broke their previously flawless patterns. Some Voratian ships drifted aimlessly, while others executed contradictory maneuvers, occasionally colliding with their own allies. What exactly did you do to them? Admiral Cathal asked over the secure channel, his translator struggling to convey his astonishment. We didn't try to outthink them, Wong explained as Rivera nodded for her to continue. That would be impossible. Their processing capacity exceeds our most advanced computers by orders of magnitude. Instead, we made them feel. Lieutenant Rodriguez elaborated from her station. The disruptor pulses carry emotional patterns, human emotional patterns. Concepts like sarcasm, nostalgia, existential doubt, conflicting desires. Things a hive mind has never needed to process. You weaponized emotions. The Phyrexian commander's voice contained equal parts horror and admiration. We introduced them to the human condition, Rivera corrected, rising from her chair. Lieutenant Park, signal the fleet. Execute attack pattern Delta. Target any Voratian vessel showing signs of communication disruption. Across the battlefield, the Allied fleet responded with a precision that would have been impossible days earlier. Ships that had once rigidly adhered to their species' traditional tactics now displayed a flexibility inspired by their human allies. A Tristan cruiser pulled off a maneuver directly inspired by ancient Earth submarine warfare, going dark and drifting unpowered behind a debris field before suddenly reactivating systems and striking from an impossible angle. A Mithrite destroyer captain abandoned her species' defensive doctrine and launched a bold flanking attack against a cluster of confused Voratian vessels. They're learning, Rivera noted with satisfaction, not just following our orders, but adopting our adaptability. The Voratian swarm continued to fragment into competing subminds, experiencing something like individuality for the first time in their collective existence. Some ships attempted to maintain their original attack plans, while others seemed to retreat, and still others fired wildly at both enemies and allies. Through the widening gaps in the enemy formation, Rivera spotted something the allies had never managed to identify before. A massive crystalline structure nearly twice the size of the Indomitable, its geometric patterns more complex than the standard Voratian vessels. That's their command ship, she said, instantly certain. The physical housing of their primary hive mind node. She tapped her comm panel. All ships. This is Captain Rivera. We've identified the Voratian command vessel. Form up on the Indomitable. We're going to press our advantage. Admiral Cathal's image appeared on the view screen, his compound eyes fixed on Rivera. Captain, what is your intention? Formation Delta, Admiral, Rivera replied with a grim smile. Just like we practiced. Cathal's mandibles clicked rapidly. We never practiced this assault vector. It would bring us directly through the heaviest concentration of remaining Voratian firepower. Exactly why they won't expect it, Rivera countered. The disruptor has them confused, but that won't last forever. We need to strike at their central node before they can adapt. After a brief hesitation, Cathal nodded. "As you say, Captain. The Allied fleet will follow your lead." The Indomitable surged forward once again, its hull scorched and battered from earlier engagements, but its weapons still operational. Behind it, alien vessels of various designs formed a wedge formation, their crews unified in purpose despite their physiological differences. Inside the Voratian command ship, something unprecedented was occurring. The collective consciousness that had guided the swarm for centuries found itself fragmenting, experiencing contradictory impulses. The alien equivalent of emotions, things the hive had never needed or understood, cascaded through their neural network. Some nodes within the collective experienced fear for the first time, others curiosity, still others something like admiration for the ingenuity of their attackers. Individual perspectives emerge within what had always been a perfect singularity of purpose. As the Indomitable closed in on the command vessel, Rivera gave her final orders for this phase of the battle. "Concentrate all fire on these coordinates," she directed, highlighting specific points on the crystalline structure. "These appear to be external communication nodes. If we can sever them from the rest of the fleet, we might be able to isolate the command ship entirely." The Allied fleet responded as one, focusing their diverse weapons systems on the designated targets. Phyrexian energy beams, Mithrite quantum torpedoes, and the Indomitable's fusion-powered pulse cannons converged on the Voratian command ship. As chunks of crystalline material shattered and drifted away from the enemy vessel, Lieutenant Okafor reported excitedly, "Captain, we're detecting a significant shift in Voratian communication patterns. The command ship is trying to reestablish control, but individual vessels are beginning to act autonomously." Rivera allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Humanity had just changed the nature of warfare in the galaxy, not through superior firepower or technology, but by introducing chaos into perfect order, individuality into a collective, and emotion into pure logic. "Press the attack," she ordered. "We're not just winning a battle here. We're liberating a species from itself." "Hull breach on decks 4 through 7. Lieutenant Rodriguez shouted over the cacophony of alarms. The Indomitable shuddered violently as another Voratian energy lance sliced through its already compromised armor. Captain Rivera gripped her command chair, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead where she'd struck a console during the last impact. The bridge lighting flickered, switching to emergency power for several seconds before the main systems recovered. "Damage report," she demanded, her voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. "Forward shield generators offline. Weapons operating at 63% capacity. Life support compromised in sections 12 through 20, Rodriguez reported, her fingers dancing across her console to reroute critical systems. From engineering, Volkov's voice crackled through the damaged communication system. "Captain, I'm trapped in the reactor control room." The corridor collapsed during that last hit. Rivera felt a chill that had nothing to do with the failing environmental systems. Status of the neural disruptor? Still operational, but I'm having to maintain it manually, Volkov replied, the sound of his tools audible in the background. The automated systems couldn't handle the power fluctuations. Lieutenant Park looked up from tactical, his expression grim. "Captain, the Voratian command vessel is showing signs of recovery. Their crystalline structure appears to be adapting to our disruptor frequency." Rivera processed this information rapidly, weighing their increasingly limited options. The Allied fleet had performed admirably, but they had suffered heavy losses. Even now, the Indomitable was taking the brunt of the Voratian counterattack, drawing fire away from their less durable allies. "Mr. Volkov," she said after a moment's consideration, "is there any way to increase the disruptor's effectiveness?" The engineering chief's laugh was grim. "There's always a way, Captain. I could reconfigure the reactor to emit a concentrated pulse. Triple the disruption field's strength. It would fry their entire command structure." The unspoken cost hung in the air. Such a modification would almost certainly breach the reactor containment, destroying the Indomitable in the process. Rivera met the eyes of each bridge officer in turn. Without words, they all conveyed the same message. They understood the stakes, and they were with her, whatever she decided. "All hands," Rivera announced shipwide, her voice remarkably calm. "This is the captain. Prepare to abandon ship. All non-essential personnel proceed to emergency evacuation pods immediately." This is not a drill. As the evacuation order echoed through the damaged vessel, Rivera opened a channel to Admiral Cathal. "Admiral, the Indomitable will make a final approach to the Voratian command ship. I need the Allied fleet to provide covering fire, then withdraw to a safe distance." Cathal's compound eyes seemed to study her intently through the view screen. "You intend to sacrifice your vessel?" It wasn't a question, but Rivera nodded anyway. "We can end this, Admiral. Ensure that the escape pods are recovered." "It will be done, Captain Rivera," Cathal replied, touching his forehead in what she recognized as a gesture of profound respect among his species. "Your actions will be remembered for generations to come." Throughout the Indomitable, crew members made their way to evacuation points, many pausing briefly to touch the walls of the ship that had been their home among the stars. In medical, Dr. Chen ensured that wounded aliens were secured in pods modified to support their unique physiologies. In communications, Lieutenant Okafor transmitted one final data packet to Earth, a record of everything they had learned about the Voratians and the successful tactics used against them. On the bridge, Rivera turned to her remaining officers. "I need a skeleton crew to guide us in. Anyone not volunteering, head to the escape pods now." Not a single officer moved from their station. "It has been my highest honor to serve with you all," Rivera said softly, before straightening in her chair. "Lieutenant Jackson, plot a direct course for the Voratian command vessel. Maximum impulse power." The damaged human warship broke from the Allied formation, accelerating toward the massive crystalline structure at the heart of the enemy fleet. Escape pods jettisoned from its hull, streaking away toward the safety of the Allied lines. In engineering, Volkov worked feverishly, rerouting the last safety protocols that governed the ship's reactor. "Always wanted to go out with a bang," he muttered to himself with grim humor as his hands, steady despite everything, made the final connections. The Allied fleet watched in stunned silence as the Indomitable, trailing debris and atmosphere, accelerated toward the heart of the enemy. "Humans," whispered a Tristan officer aboard Admiral Cathal's flagship, "they don't just accept sacrifice, they embrace it." Rivera's voice came over the fleet-wide channel one last time. "This is Captain Helena Rivera of Earth. Remember us." The Indomitable rammed the crystalline command ship, its remaining weapons firing point-blank into the alien vessel's structure. Deep in engineering, Volkov triggered the reactor overload with precise timing. For one brilliant moment, the quantum disruption cascaded through the entire Voratian consciousness, not just confusion now, but complete neural separation. A blinding flash illuminated the battlefield as the Indomitable detonated, taking the heart of the Voratian command structure with it. As the light faded, the swarm fell into disarray, individual ships suddenly cut off from the guiding intelligence that had controlled them for centuries. Some powered down completely, others drifted aimlessly, and still others began to move with the first tentative patterns of independent thought. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time, victory wasn't just possible, it was inevitable. The vast council chamber fell silent as the survivors of the HSS Indomitable entered. 3 standard cycles, approximately 2 Earth months, had passed since the battle at Nexus Station. The Voratian collective had retreated to its home systems, fundamentally altered by their encounter with humanity. Captain Helena Rivera led her crew, now reduced to 219 from the original complement of 287, with quiet dignity. Her dress uniform bore the hastily added insignia created by ally artisans, a stylized image of the Indomitables, silhouetted against a quantum burst. Each surviving crew member wore the same emblem, now recognized throughout Council space as a mark of extraordinary courage. The Supreme Counselor of the Galactic Alliance, an ancient Phyrexian whose crystalline form shimmered with accumulated wisdom, rose from the central podium. The chamber's perfect acoustics carried her voice to every corner without technological assistance. For 3,000 cycles, we believed perfect logic and harmony were the pinnacle of evolution. She began, her multifaceted eyes sweeping across the assembled representatives of 24 species. We built our civilization on prediction, on patterns, on the certainty that comes with perfect information. Her gaze settled on the human delegation. Humanity has shown us a different path, one where unpredictability, emotion, and even chaos become strengths rather than weaknesses. Admiral Kethul stepped forward, his chidness exoskeleton gleaming under the chamber's lights. The battle records have been studied by every tactical academy in Council space. What the Indomitable accomplished was not merely a military victory, but a fundamental shift in our understanding of conflict and cooperation. From the shadows at the edge of the chamber, a figure emerged that caused murmurs to ripple through the assembly. A Voratian representative, not the swarm of crystalline drones that had previously represented their species, but a singular entity, moving with an independence never before seen in their kind. "We address you as..." I, the Voratian, began, using a personal pronoun that had never before existed in their language. "What your species has given us cannot be measured by conventional standards. We believed ourselves superior because we knew all outcomes. Humans showed us that not knowing, embracing uncertainty, creates possibilities we never imagined." The Voratian's crystalline structure pulsed with colors that the translator struggled to interpret. Many within our collective resist this change. They seek to restore the singular consciousness that guided us for millennia. Others embrace the gift of individuality, difficult though it may be. We have withdrawn to our systems not in defeat, but to resolve this existential question. Is it better to be one perfect mind or many imperfect ones? Rivera listened, understanding the profound impact her crew's actions had wrought. They hadn't merely won a battle, they had transformed a civilization. The Supreme Counselor gestured, and holographic displays materialized throughout the chamber, showing images of shipyards throughout Council space. The Council announces a radical restructuring of our defense protocols. We are forming a new joint force based on human tactical doctrines, with officers from all species training together to develop the adaptability that humanity has demonstrated. Rivera stepped forward to receive the Stellar Cross, the highest honor in Council history. As she accepted the crystalline medal, she shook her head gently. "This honor belongs not just to those of us who stand before you, but to those who gave their lives." Chief Engineer Maxim Volkov, who manually triggered the final pulse. Lieutenant Darius Jackson, who piloted us to the very end. Dr. Amara Okafor, who first identified the Voratian neural patterns. She named each fallen crew member, her voice never faltering despite the weight of their absence. We came from Earth not seeking glory, but offering assistance to fellow sentient beings in need. That is the true legacy of humanity that we hope will endure. The ceremony concluded with an unexpected transmission from Earth, footage of massive shipyards launching an entire fleet of vessels. Unlike the Indomitable, these ships incorporated both human ingenuity and alien technology freely shared by their new allies. What had begun as a desperate last stand had blossomed into an unprecedented era of cooperation. Ambassador Schuller, her scales now radiant with health and purpose, leaned toward a council elder and whispered with newfound respect tinged with healthy fear. "The Voratians should be grateful they only faced one human ship. Get ready. Humanity hasn't just joined the battle, they've changed the very nature of warfare in our galaxy." As the human delegation prepared to return to Earth, Captain Rivera paused at a viewport overlooking the vast Council space station. Stars glittered in the darkness, the same stars visible from Earth, yet now forever changed in humanity's perception. "We came as strangers," she murmured to herself, "and found our place among the stars." Behind her, Lieutenant Rodriguez smiled. "And this is just the beginning, isn't it, Captain?" Rivera nodded, watching as a new class of ship, sleek, powerful, and bearing both Earth's emblem and the mark of the Galactic Council, prepared for its maiden voyage. "Humanity is ready," she said simply, "and the galaxy will never be the same again."